Industry panel. My name is Angela Farr-Schiller, and I'm the Director of Arts Education for ArtsBridge. And on behalf of the Foundation, I would like to extend a very, very warm and heartfelt welcome and thank you to all of our esteemed panelists, and a huge congratulations to all the graduates of 2020. I'm taking a breath for myself. I'm taking a breath for you. It's been a heck of a year so far, and it's only June. June, which is traditionally a month of countless graduations and celebrations, but we know from the civil rights uprisings that have been occurring in our streets and across the globe to the devastating effects of COVID-19 that this has been a June like no other. That being said, the Pulitzer Prize winning novelist and scholar Toni Morrison writes, "This is the time. This is the time for every artist in every genre to do what he or she does loudly and consistently. It doesn't matter what your position is. There is no time for anything else but the very best that you have." And there's no better time to think about the very best that you have and how to apply those tools to the next right steps than today, Juneteenth, the day when the last of the enslaved in Galveston, Texas, were notified of their freedom. Juneteenth is a day to take stock of where we have come from and where we are going. It's a time to dream big and to plan accordingly. And this salute to graduating seniors is an opportunity to do just that, to gain insight from artists, from agents, from choreographers, from designers who want to share with you some of their insights about the pathways going forward. So with that, we're going to start off with an opening question generated from you, the students. Now, panelists, you may feel free to answer any question when and where you see fit. There's no specific order kind of in this opening moment. For students, as the panelists are speaking, and you can see for me as well, you will see their names written on the bottom square. Yesterday, we sent out a whole list of bios and packets of all of the panelists. So if you want to go deeper into who the different panelists are, feel free to refer to that or just watch and listen. So let's get started. We will do as many questions in this opening section as we have time for, and then we will slowly start to move into our various focus areas. So the first question for our panelist is, and this is probably a very anticipated question, what are your predictions about the industry after COVID? How do you think theater will change? This is open to any of our panelists.
So I will try to answer that question. In my experience over these last 12 or 13 weeks, I had a show running on Broadway that was closed on March 13th. And since that time, I've been, I wake up every day with an hour and a half of listening to Mahalia Jackson, who was a great gospel singer. And then I pray and I meditate, and then I get on my bike and exercise, and then I read a little, and then I go on Zoom and visit young kids in elementary school, and then I study film at night, and then I talk to some friends around the country, fellow artists. And what I feel and this is what I say, if you're the same artist after the pandemic and after the epidemic, if you're the same artist before as you are on the other side, then you haven't learned anything. So I get a sense that artists are going to be stronger, deeper. I'm almost afraid to see what some writers will write, you know, like Terrell McCraney and Katori Hall and Jeremy O. Harris. I'm afraid to see what they're going to write because I think it's going to be so deep. And I think the actors are going to be standing more in the moment. And I think that young actors are going to be pushing harder to get out there, to tell their stories. I think they're going to be more platforms to tell our stories. And I think it's going to be a much more beautiful world because we're going to understand our connectedness to each other. And lastly, I want to say that, you know, sometimes the answers are not in the political arena. It's not in the religious arena. Sometimes the answers are in the artistic arena. And I think that all the young people coming out of high school now, I'm just so excited and encouraged by the possibilities of what they're going to do because your generation is there. You know, you're up to the task. You know, every generation is tested, but you're tested now. But I think that you're ready for it. And I'm excited to see what this new generation artist is going to say. But to answer your question, finally, is that I am radically optimistic of the world after this.
Great, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to say I concur with Kenny. It's I was thinking about this a lot over the last few months, and it's the first opportunity in my life that I've ever had that kind of time to reflect on where I came from, where I've been, and where I'm headed. And I feel like, you know, as Kenny said, it's a huge opportunity for us to voice what we feel has led us to this point. And it's a great opportunity to continue our storytelling abilities, to have our voices, as you said earlier, be loud, because it's time for us to all stop being complacent. And I feel like this whole pandemic and the demonstrations and everything have really led us to a point that we haven't been to in quite a while. Having grown up in Atlanta in the '60s and going through all of the civil rights movements back then, you know, seems like really the last opportunity we've really had to move forward. And then things kind of got complacent for a few decades, and now we're back to a place where we're all looking at a new world. And so, you know, we can't reflect on it yet because we're just here, and it's here and now, as you said earlier. So I feel like it's, you know, moving forward, we're going to have a lot of new voices and a lot of really interesting stories to tell. I just think it's an exciting time, even though it's a very odd and somewhat heavy time as well. So.
Well, I want to say congratulations to our artists and artist scholars. You know, the world moves so fast, and I think, and at some days I feel like we moved on from COVID to the next thing and to the next thing. So I think it's such a perfect opportunity for high school students to create your own work and create your own work that's based on these times. You are the future. You all have opinions, and you all have so many things that you think about. So I think that this is a perfect time for you all to do the great work using your iPhones and your iPads. And I was listening to Anna Devere Smith on MSNBC with Joy in the Morning, and she gave this amazing talk that just said that it is the artist that really captures the times and captures the stories that are told for people to understand that move society forward. So I think that this is a great time for you. And like Kenny says, I'm very optimistic. I've been personally myself and just been very challenged by a lot of the current events of the day, but it also does excite me to kind of think about things that I can do and things that I can create that hopefully will kind of move the paradigm forward. So congratulations, and those are my thoughts on that.
I'd like to speak on behalf of people who work on Broadway and off Broadway, because I represent actors. And I've been so heartened by the fact that they've all spent this time trying to become better people themselves, that they've all joined the Black Lives Matter protests in different cities. And even though they're all spread out all over the country right now, I'm convinced that when we all come back, they're going to come back with a deeper understanding of themselves as human beings and the people around them. And I think it makes them better actors. I'm hoping Billy Hopkins agrees with me too.
I want to jump in and just echo what's been said, because I think that there's kind of two components, many more, but just for time's sake and surface conversation's sake, there's the creative side and then there's the logistical side. And I think both provide a real opportunity for people to get creative. You know, maybe for a while we won't be showing up in theaters with full audiences like it has been, but the one thing about performers, give us a barn, give us a sidewalk, give us anywhere, and we'll put on a show. So I think for sure that there's going to be a lot of innovation, and I'm really looking forward to seeing particularly what the youth puts out, because this is your time. You know, I think that a lot of you all is graduating and you're looking at, well, how things have been done and how can I get in there? Well, now's a chance for you to make things the way you want them done and to really reinvent the system. So I echo how exciting of a time this is going to be, and how amazing you all are going to be during it and after.
I would love to piggyback on that as well, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I don't know where I am in life, but it's a really exciting time to be entering, I think, the adult arena as a professional, as a creative, because I mean, what a wonderful bridge between the reality of the world. What a wonderful bridge between what we are able to write, what we are able to create. Being a makeup artist, I think going back to the logistical side of things are going to change quite a bit. I think the technicalities will change, but the passion and the work will not. And I know that this has been a heartbreaking season for so many people, so many artists, so many creatives, but to be entering this field at such a time of revolution is unprecedented in my generation and unprecedented in this time. It's an exciting time to be an artist. It's an exciting time to imitate life. And I encourage everybody that is entering this industry to captivate, really take hold of and honor what it is that you represent right now in history. Some of the greatest shows, some of the greatest things written happen from personal experience. And I'm excited to see what grows from this generation because of the things we've gone through.
Could I say one quick thing before we move on? I want to say to all the seniors, I can remember back, it's not the same thing, but it's a similar occurrence when we had 9/11, and the questions as an artist you have are, okay, what does what I do, how does that matter to life and to people around us? And I think you really have to understand that being an artist now is more important than ever for society and for people who need to feel that life has more meaning, is better than the current situation. And as an artist, I'm so excited for you guys coming up, because art matters. Art matters in everyday life, but art especially matters when the world goes through things like this. And I just want you to know that you're a privileged group of people because you're providing a service to society that no one can, and it's that important. And it when things like this happen, it just reiterates that fact that society needs art and they need artists. And I'm so excited for you guys on the start of your journey to understand that you matter and that you're important and you're needed in elevating society.
Amen.
Thank you, Schuler. Does anyone else want to jump in on this question before we move to the next opening question?
I want to jump in just for a sec to echo what Kenny said. a year ago, I was doing a play with Kenny in Central Park, and I think prior to that production, I always thought that theater couldn't really be political effectively, and Kenny showed me that it can be. And I'm not going to go into it more deeply than that, but he set the play ever so slightly in the future. And what I learned from that also is that when Kenny Leon tells you what might be coming in the future, pay attention, because he's pretty smart about it. But another thing I wanted to say, that this is something I've learned in the pandemic. As a lot of people, I've had a lot of time on my hand. And so I picked up War and Peace, which is a novel I always wanted to read, and I never had time to read it. And I'm a slow reader, so I'm only about halfway through even now. But what I realized maybe a month ago is I had seen the musical Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet that's based on War and Peace. And I was imagining the actors who played those roles as I was reading the novel. And about 600 pages in, it occurred to me, I was imagining Natasha, who's this little girl in Russia in 1912. I was imagining Danae Benton, who played that role on Broadway, in the role, without questioning it, without thinking about it. And for those who didn't see it, she's a young African-American actress, a really wonderful actress. And, you know, Natasha is a made-up character. She wouldn't have existed, period, but she probably wouldn't have been African-American historically. And yet that's how I'm imagining the story as I read it. And it shows the power of representation to affect imagination. And I had read 600 pages of this book before it even occurred to me what was in my head. But for all of you who are entering the world, you are going to reshape the world. And I will second Kenny again and say I'm radically optimistic about where we're going. I think there's a great deal of hope out there. And I think the theater was on a good path. I think it's going to be on a much better path coming out of this. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Great. Anyone else want to jump in with this last question?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Norm.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations to everyone. I'm going to come at this in a different way. I agree with what everyone has said, and I feel that all of you students need to continue on your artistic path, learning, taking class, whether it be virtually or if you can socially distant from a voice teacher or a dance class or something like that. Continue on that path. But think about this. This industry is a business, and you are an entrepreneur, and you're going to, with your art, you're going to try to make money in order to support your art. I encourage you right now, especially in this time, still take your classes and your in your art, but learn coding, learn some sort of social media skill, because what I've learned as an entrepreneur, you need to have multiple streams of income in order to survive. And right now, this pandemic has proven that, because people don't have money coming in. So if you can do other things, even virtually, which would be the wave of the future, well, you know, it's here now, but it's the wave of the future. If you can help someone with their social media, if you can be a personal assistant to someone, taking like 2 or 3 hours a day to make money in order to support your art, look at it that way. Learn any kind of skill you can that will help you make money to support your art.
Great. This is an excellent point, Norm. Anyone else want to jump in on this last question? All right. Oh, yes?
I'll just say one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Kenny.
Something my grandmother used to say to me. She said, take you wherever you go. And that means wherever you go, try to be your true, authentic self. If you are a white kid born in the South of Georgia and your people were sharecroppers, take that with you. If you're, wealthy and entitled and living in Connecticut and whatever, take that. It's like what I want to say to you, taking yourself wherever you go in an authentic way is a gift to the world. So if you dig into what makes you you, where do your passions lie? Who are your people? Your gift to the world is to be your true authentic self and to trust that that is enough. You are enough. And it's like Norm said, you don't have to define yourself in a narrow way. Define yourself in a big way, in every possible way. But trust me, our gift to each other as human beings, if we be our true authentic self. Me personally, I grew up poor in Tallahassee, Florida, went to a historically Black college, born on Mickey Road, and ended up on Broadway. How the hell did that happen? So just know that not everyone gets there because they went to this high school or went to this college or went to this institution. You can get there many, many ways. The key is just to dig into yourself and dig into the truth and dig into the passion. What do you want to wake up every day doing the rest of your life and figure out a way to get paid for that?
Absolutely. My grandmother used to tell me, if you don't bring it, it won't get brought. So it's up to us to do that. Thank you so much for participating in it as a whole panel for this opening section. These are really, really wonderful things for us to hold and consider as we move into our first focus group, led by the wonderful ArtsBridge Executive Director, Jennifer Dobbs.
Thank you, Angela. I'm still recovering from that powerful intro. Oh my goodness. Well, hello, everyone. I'm excited to lead us into our first focus group, which will last until 12:35. This group is entitled Choreographers and Directors, and it features choreographer, director Kenneth Green, director Kenny Leone, and choreographer Warren Carlisle.
Yay, Warren!
Woohoo! Thank you so very much for being with us today, and welcome to the panel. I want to start off with a few pre-selected questions from our students. And I think the first one, because they are graduating seniors, is the most appropriate. The question is, I've looked into so many theater degree programs and have found that most of them don't specifically offer directing or choreography as a major. For someone who wants to do both, what advice would you give me to prepare to take on those two jobs one day? Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it. I would say practice being a great storyteller. Practice being a magnificent storyteller.
Okay.
You know, I didn't study directing at all in any shape or form. And I didn't study choreography either. But I love storytelling. I'm passionate about storytelling. And I studied art, and I studied English, and I studied music. And those disciplines help me assemble a great team of people around me, and those people help me tell the story. That's where I start from, because I'm not a confident director. I don't think of myself as a director, choreographer. I think of myself as a choreographer director.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be my simple advice: is learn what everybody else does. Learn all about the music. Learn all about the lighting. Learn what a stage manager does. Learn how to communicate with actors too, because they're your best friends. They're the best friends you're ever going to meet.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. I agree with Warren, and Kenneth Green may know this about me, but I attended a historically Black college, and I was a political science major.
Wow.
And Spike Lee was at the school across the street, and Samuel L. Jackson was studying in the center, in the same center. And Angela Bassett was our friend. And my answer is, there are many ways to get to where you want to be. I consider myself a storyteller. So I've done opera, I've done musicals, I've done drama, I've done the live musicals on TV, but it's all about being a storyteller. So ask yourself, how can you be a better person as you walk through life? Who are you listening to? You can study movement by looking at people at a dance, just sitting there on the side, taking that in. You can understand truth by going to the courthouse, which is free. Sit in a courtroom and watch people lie and say, oh, that's what a liar looks like. You know, sit on the bus, sit on the train when we get to the other side of this pandemic and study human behavior. So it's about, I mean, one time I visited South Africa for about 4 weeks. And I realized in South Africa, there's no difference. There's no separation between actors and dancers and musicians. They're all are storytellers. So I would say, look at yourself as a storyteller. Don't let the industry divide you up and tell you what you are, because if you do, that's what you'll be. You have to keep redefining how you want to live, how you want to tell your stories, and how you see it happening, and then understand the idea of collaboration. You know, you may not be good at one thing, but somebody else that you know is good at that. So how can we all get in the room to tell this story and collaborate on moving the story forward?
Well, I can say and concur with the last two speakers is that everything is about the storytelling. Even if you look at a 15-second commercial, it is about the storytelling in that 15-second commercial. I would say study choreographers, study directors, learn their backgrounds, learn where they came from, learn about their education. If you have an opportunity to spend time in museums, go to exhibitions, go to music concerts, all the storytelling lives in those disciplines as well. If there was one area that I would say I wished I had drilled down on more in terms of developing as a choreographer is in music. Because I can't tell you how many times I have come up in situations with musical directors and situations where if I had paid just a little more attention in that music theory class to figure out how this bar goes against that bar, how you cut time, it would have saved a lot of arguments, would have made a cast a little bit happier. So that music theory and choreography really go hand in hand. But learn you can about all the disciplines. Learn how storytelling lies in costume design. Learn how storytelling lies in makeup, because all that will inform what you do as a choreographer and also as a director. So storytelling is really the key to everything we do, regardless of the discipline.
I'll tell you one quick story. When I had the opportunity to direct my first story behind camera, it was on a show after I did A Raisin in the Sun on television. I did something called The Ghost Whisperer. And then I did a show called Private Practice. And there was a DP, director of photography named Lex DuPont. And I said, Lex, I had a pretty good time directing this episode. And next time I come back to the set, I'm gonna know every camera lens. I'm gonna know every instrument. He said, Kenny, do me a favor. Don't do that. There are people going to school trained to move these cameras. What we need you to do is what you always do. You tell stories. You give actors an understanding of how to communicate to each other. You talk about relationships. So trust that you know deep down in your bones, you know how to tell a story. What we have to do as directors is learn how to ask the right questions. So if I'm directing, I don't have to be responsible for what happens with the camera or how big the lens is. I have to just ask the right question. You know, how can I get this to feel like this? And then you empower other people around you to help you tell this story. When we did Hairspray Live, that we had, right before we went on air, I had to speak to the company. There were 800 people on crew, 800. So that means, young people, that there were 800 jobs to create the live telecast of Hairspray Live. So sometimes we just think about, oh, being in front of the camera. No, there's somebody else that makes the wig. There's somebody else who designed the shoes. There's somebody else who fixes the lens. There's somebody else. There are 800 jobs to tell a story. So there may be other areas of interest in terms of being in our business, because truthfully, you know, less than 1% of us really make it in this industry on the same way. So you have to decide to yourself, is it okay to tell a story and to be a director or actor in community theater and academic theater? And because all of that is just as important. And also look at the specific jobs and the way you may be involved. But the main thing I'm pushing is to understand the collaborative nature of storytelling.
Wonderful, thank you. And a second question that will probably close us out, that's really important to the students, is tell me how you booked your first job, major job, as a director or choreographer.
Oh, I can go. Complete accident. It was a complete and total accident. I was never supposed to be a director. No, not me, not my job. I was hired to choreograph in Florida, a show, Tale of Two Cities. The director had never done a musical. He's a wonderful, wonderful director of plays, but had never done a musical. And the music took him down and they needed someone to help. So as choreographer, I then stepped up and I became the director of a $19 million Broadway flop.
Wow.
That was my first time out. That was my first time out. It was amazing. It nearly scared me away. I waited a few years and then I came back again. But yeah, I'm a complete accidental director.
I love that, Warren, because, you know, implicit in what you just said was that you got to fall before you get up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So don't think that you got to be perfect all your life. No, anybody that's great has always made mistakes and you know, fell down and got up. For me, I started out, I was a political science major. I went to a little bit of law school for a little time because I was trying to be what my folks who you know, they raised me as poor parents, but I was trying to be like, oh, they want me to be something that they know. They want me to be a lawyer or a doctor or something. So I'm in college now. I got to live the dreams of my parents. Mm-hmm. And then if I was talking to my younger self, I would say, no, you can't live the dream of your parents, but you can articulate to your parents why you have a passion to do what you do. And you have to be clear about why I'm going to do it, why I want to do this. And also you have to explain to them, well, how are you going to live, baby? They're worried about how you're going to live. So you got to say, okay, don't worry. I got it planned out. I got a plan. I'm going to work at this restaurant. I'm going to do this and it's worth it. So I started as an actor. And then one day I was given an opportunity to direct this play called The Wishing Place, just because they let all the actors in the company direct the play. And I directed this play and I thought it was great. And the artistic director said, I don't think you have the skills to direct. And then on that day, I knew I felt something different when I directed. So I had to have the confidence to say like, whoa, I need to chase this for a minute. And what I realized when I was acting, I felt like I was always a slice of the pie. I mean, many of you know how that feels. Like you just got to figure out, how do I fit in with the rest of the company? How do I fit in with the ensemble? What's my relationship to the other characters? And then when I started directing that first time, I realized, oh, I have to know what the pie is made of, how sweet the potatoes are, what's the texture of the crust, what kind of pan should I put it in? And then I was like, oh, that was a different feeling for me. And it's not better than the acting feeling, but for me, I knew that's where I belong. And so I think part of our growth and process is like, you know, you might think what you want to do at 16 or 17, but what you feel now might just be pushing you in the right direction. Don't think that you have to know how it ends. You know, a lot of you want to you don't want to read the first chapter. You want to be to the end of the book. Just trust that you're going in the right direction. And that's what I would say to my younger self. Trust that you're going in the right direction, find that passion, creatively figure out a way to get paid for
it. I used to watch the early Cosby Show when he used to have the Lester Wilson dancers. Now, probably not a lot of you remember that, but Cosby would feature all of these just great dance routines. And at the time, I was probably 14, 15, and I knew I wanted to be a Lester Wilson dancer. I lived in California at the time. I studied at a very late age. But the whole time I was watching Lester Wilson dancers, I was watching the design. I was watching how the dancers got on and off stage and how they would take a circle from a square and how they would bring fans on and roll boxes on and dancers on top of the boxes. But I didn't know what that was. I later was fortunate to gain a job at Disneyland, and I worked in the parades at Disneyland. I moved up from the parades to become a parade captain. And then I became a unit captain. And basically what the unit captain does, he would take the choreography that was already set on the dancers, and you kept it clean and you moved it around and you kind of would make changes as needed. And then I had a whole 5 units one day. Choreographer got sick for the beginning of a new parade. And then I was recommended to become the choreographer of that parade. That parade ended up having 500 performers in it with all the total units, including a marching band and Glockenstein girls and characters. And I never thought that I would be able to pull it off, but I have always had such a passion for design and how things kind of move in and out. And I was very fortunate. And from there, I was able to kind of move up in the Disney company, ended up a casting director for Walt Disney World for a short period of time. But it was just kind of being at the right place at the right time, just really being passionate about what I was doing and was just looking for the opportunity to kind of work on my passion.
Well, thank you all. As a previous dancer who was inspired by Solid Gold, if any of you remember that show, I was so excited to take this focus group because my personal passion. But thank you all so much for imparting your wisdom on our students. And we're going to turn this back over to Angela, and then we're going to move into our second focus group. It's entitled Agents and Managers. Take it away.
Hello. So how many of you know the difference between a talent manager and a talent agent? The question should be popping up in your Zoom now for a poll. We'll just take a few seconds for you to answer that. Seeing some maybe, some no ideas. Great. Great. These answers are really helpful for us. Excellent. Okay, we can go ahead and end the poll right there. So mostly maybe I know the difference or no idea yet. So then I guess that takes us to actually our very first question. Can each of you tell us about what you do and what is the difference between an agent and a manager?
Start, because we share a lot of clients together.
Did you say you'll let me start?
Yeah, for once.
Okay, you cut out that. So right. Well, I mean, it's sort of an esoteric difference depending on where you are in your career. I think really we share a lot of the same functions in general, in that we look out for our clients and we want to make sure that we have their best interests at heart. And I think the agent has a specific business function in that it's our job to procure and negotiate employment for artists. And how it differs from the management side is I think from management really develops and counsels artists in the selection of those jobs and the other things that that they might use to build their career. So I think from a technical standpoint, that's really the major delineation. But as Jeff will tell you, I think because our goals are aligned, we really find ourselves in collaboration doing a lot of the same things back and forth and assisting each other in developing the trajectory for a client's career.
I mean, I would agree with Glenn, of course. And I think that ideally we split all the work almost down the line. Agents are very good at getting auditions for the clients. It doesn't mean the manager should try or get an audition if they can. It's a collaboration. I had a young client years ago who was doing very well in Los Angeles, and managers started inviting her for meetings. And she said to me, "What should I ask them when they say, do you have any questions?" And I said, ask them who they have in their Rolodex that they can get you a meeting with tomorrow that your agent can't. And if they answer Steven Spielberg, you don't have to call me back. Sign a contract with them, make sure you get the meeting. If they say we know every casting director in town, tell them thank you and smile and leave, because your agent also knows every casting director in town. So we have to have complementary Rolodexes, so to speak, to make sure the client gets in the room, to influence whether they get the job. And I think Glenn and I share, I think, 8 or 9 clients who are all happier to have a whole team than they are to be on their own, even with a good agent.
What, just going to some of the questions from the students, what makes you want to sign an actor? And a specific question is, what can we do to make ourselves more marketable in the industry?
I'll let Jeff take the first crack at
Okay.
this one.
Well, I mean, the most important thing is to do good work. When you wake up in the morning, if you say, my ambition is to get an agent, or my ambition is to get a manager, go into another career. If you wake up in the morning and say, I want to be an actor today, you're probably ready for an agent or a manager or some kind of representation. And we go to a lot of showcases. We go to, when you're a New York based agent or manager, we go to the theater a lot. And we see people that spark our interest. And that's usually how it starts. I don't know if Glenn would agree with me or not. I sometimes go with a gut feeling. I've signed a couple of clients that I've either had very little experience seeing them in something, but I've looked at their resume and I see who they work with and what they've done, and I would take a chance on somebody like that. I have just as much chance of being right as somebody who wants to see a client do a lot before they'll meet them or talk to them.
I think from an agency standpoint, it's a very esoteric question, because I think the idea of marketability is a very business oriented thing. And I think agents, if an agent is only signing somebody because they think they're going to make $1 million with them, it's the wrong motivation. The collaboration that happens between an artist and the representation really has to be larger than just the money. We have a lot of other responsibilities as far as building a career for somebody. And so the things that inspire, I think, me personally is watching the work. And a lot of our business is done on referral. So a manager who I trust, like Jeff, might introduce me to an artist that he represents and invite me to go to a play to see, or send over a demo reel of some television or film work. And that's sort of one of the key places that we find new talent is talent that's been developed by managers or been represented for a while by a manager. But also it's connecting with somebody's art and feeling like I could make a difference. Like if I could make a difference in how their career moves forward, then I think that's something that's exciting, and that helps me get my other agents excited, and helps me get the casting community excited, and puts that momentum forward.
I mean, Glenn and I share a client, and he'll know who it is right away. I have a client who taught at Pace University for a couple of years while she was still working on Broadway and doing television. And she called me one day and said, I want you to see a student of mine. They're doing a student production of Light in the Piazza on Thursday. And I said, no, thanks. And she said, why? I said, I don't really like Light in the Piazza. And she said, okay, so I'll see you at 7 o'clock. And I said, all right. And I showed up and I saw the most wonderful Clara, who's the lead in the show, that I had ever seen. I mean, so much better than the actress I saw do it on Broadway. And she was a sophomore and 19 years old and from Vermont. And she was just so good in this that I said, could I send you out to some auditions? And I think it was her third or fourth audition for Jack O'Brien. She went in for the national tour of Sound of Music that he was doing. And she ended up being the lead. She's played Maria when she turned 20. Glenn saw her in Los Angeles because I asked him to. And we've been working with her ever since. She's made a Broadway debut. She just had a big off-Broadway debut that unfortunately was cut short by the coronavirus. But when I saw her, I was just compelled to represent her. And I didn't say, well, wait until you're 21 or finish college. I mean, she got a job. And even her student advisor said, well, you want to be an actress, now you're an actress. And I think that's important. You're ready when you're ready. The cake is baked when it's done. And everybody comes through a different journey, but talent always has a way of showing itself.
That's a really great point, because one of the questions that came up a couple of times in this section is, when do you recommend an actor get an agent? So we have a lot of students who are transitioning, from high school to the professional world, or maybe they're going out into college theater, and just wondering, like, when do I reach out to an agent? How do I know when I should do that? Should I invite them to my college shows or high school shows? Or yeah, so that really is the question, is when do you recommend an actor get an agent? What is that moment in their career when it's like, now it's time?
That's a very hard question, because it really is so personal, and it really depends on the person. I guess what I would say is the first important advocate that you have as an artist is yourself. And what you really need to begin to start your career is to build a network of like-minded people who all sort of believe in one another and are there to support one another, and to work to create art. And as your roles continue, or as your projects continue, I don't think there's a scientific time that you should say, well, I've reached this plateau and now it's time for me to have an agent. I think it's putting yourself out there and being available to receive. And I mean, asking. It's really about inviting and building and asking and making sure that your work can be seen. And the only way to do that is to do it. And so that's what makes it so difficult, I think, to say that there is an idea where you're going to pick a time and say that it's now time for me to get an agent. I just don't think the opportunity materializes in that way. I think it's much more organic.
And let me ask this other kind of follow-up question is, with so many choices around agents or managers, how do you know how to choose the right one for you, or how do you know if this is a real, like, legitimate agency to go with, or how do you navigate that kind of decision making?
If you get a feeling that you're all on the same wavelength, you should probably go with the feeling. If you think that this is a wonderful agent, but he's very busy and he's a very well-known agent and I'll never get him on the phone and I'm scared to call him, that's the wrong agent for you. You have to be able to communicate. And that's why your question is so tough, because there are 14-year-olds who are brilliant at communicating their ideas and their thoughts and their needs to an agent or manager. And then there are 14-year-olds who aren't.
Or 60-year-olds.
Wait. What?
Or 60-year-olds.
60-year-olds, the same.
Who aren't.
Everybody sort of comes to their place in different ways. I have a client who was starring on Broadway in Phantom of the Opera when I met her, and she didn't have an agent or manager. And I said, how did you get this job? And it was from a local open call in Winnipeg, Canada. And she ended up on Broadway. And at first I was going to say to her, well, maybe you don't even need a manager, but I looked at the contract she'd done and I realized she acted a lot better than she negotiated. But so she did need somebody. But everybody comes to it differently. If you're in New York, it's much easier to get seen because you can get an audition for a play or a musical through an open call. Where Glenn is in Los Angeles, they don't have open calls for TV series. And if you don't have a good agent or manager, you're not likely to book television or film in such a way that an agent or manager would see you. Wouldn't you agree on that, Glenn?
True. And I think that's one of the reasons why that development process is so difficult. And it's much more difficult in Los Angeles because there isn't the ecology of theater that you have in New York, where there are opportunities where there's a lot of cross-pollination of casting directors getting out to seeing theater and producers getting out to the theater and sort of being able to discover people on their own. It's a little bit more of a filter going on in Los Angeles. But that really brings me back to what I was saying before about building a network, and the idea. I think the lesson I learned as a younger agent is that in most situations, people are looking like there's a level, like this person has power and this person doesn't, or this person needs a job and this person gives the job. And it's really not like that. Once you get into the system, everybody is in a different position. And there are times when an artist has all the power just because of the quality of their work. And it's not about a producer or a casting director or somebody else giving you permission to act. It's about being undeniable. It's about having this raw talent that people want to collaborate with. And through building your personal network and having some mentorship of people that have gone through that system, I think you put yourself in an environment where you can find those other people.
I agree. And I also think that your goal should be not about achieving stardom, but achieving excellence. And when you're all students in Georgia, if you know Schuler Hensley, who helped put this together, and Schuler calls one of either me or Glenn and said, oh boy, I just saw a 16-year-old who's a terrific actress. We're going to take a look at them. But they're terrific not because they want to be stars, but because they want to be excellent at what they do. Schuler's daughter is a really good case in point. She started college in New York, and I sent her out for some auditions, and she was just getting terrific feedback. And she went to her dad and said, all my classmates are goofing around and partying. I don't think I need this. And she doesn't. She's got the best acting coach she could have and a father. And she's getting into rooms and she's getting really good feedback. That's because she works really hard at being good, not at being famous.
It's interesting to hear both these sentiments, both in the directing and choreographer focus, and also in this as well. Thank you. This was really, really wonderful. So now we're going to move on to our next area, but we'll return back and bring Glenn and Jeff back for the closing question as well. Thank you both. I also want to say to the students, if you have questions for any of our panelists, feel free to go ahead and write them directly inside of the chat box or Q&A box as well. So now let's move on to a part of theater that sometimes can get a little bit overlooked in panels like these, but we wanted to make sure that we make space for, and that's design and technical theater with our ArtsBridge program coordinator extraordinaire, Adine Cross.
Thank you, Angela. We're so excited to have you all here today. And, we know that theater would not be the same without all of the brilliant designers and technicians that bring these stories to life. So I would like to introduce our panel of designers, starting with hair and makeup artist, Pamela Pimpleton, scenic designer, Beowulf Boret, and scenic lighting and costume designer, Pamela Rodriguez Montero. Thank you all for being here with us. Let's get started with a few pre-selected questions from our students. What would you say is the process in analyzing the text with a visual lens towards design?
Tell me what.
Yeah, Pamela, if you want to start, go ahead.
From a makeup and hair design standpoint, I think the process is beautiful. The process is amazing. It starts obviously with analyzing the script. It starts with meeting with your lighting designer, with your costume designer to make sure that you're all on the same page. Collaboration, I think, would be the buzzword, is how the process begins. But understanding how you contribute to telling a visual story is really how I get that ball rolling. And then the components are pretty standard. There's so many things that have changed in the world of design from a technology standpoint, particularly in the last 10 years in my craft, that now we do things a little bit differently. You're not showing up with your Bible makeup morgue that is, 20 inches thick anymore. Now we're utilizing things in a different way. So kind of even how we're operating right now, you collaborate in a much different way.
Yes, I will echo on that. It's all collaboration. We read the text, but there's a lot of conversations, and also I think there's an openness to keep your your senses open to like different things that might tackle that spark, and you get started on it. I first read it, and then I try to think like, how can I tell this story visually? What elements am I using? What is my color palette? Am I gonna go for like cold tones or like warm tones and like textures? And then you start like opening yourself to different types of inspiration, doing your own research and going back and forth, collaborating, you know, as a costume designer, even talking to a cast and crew and like saying, okay, do you think, like, how do you think about that? What do you see your character doing? How do you see this happening? And then, you know, just, it's a beautiful dialogue. It's a beautiful process, you know, it's something that I love. And it all starts just asking that question, like, how can I visually tell this story? How can I push the storytelling in this way?
I would second all of that, and it really does with most of the theater that I do anyway. Again, it starts with the script. You read it. There's certainly non-script based storytelling, but I read the script, and really before I do anything, I sit down with my director, because that's going to be the person I figure out how we want to tell the story. If I'm doing a Midsummer Night's Dream, there's 1,000 different ways I can design it, and they might all be good. But I've got to talk to my director and say, what are we trying to focus on in this production, so that it's clear? Because you can't, as a designer, you can't put 1,000 ideas out there, or it will just be messy. You've got to pick one or two and focus on those and make it clear. And that's what's really exciting. And that's what, you know, I can do Midsummer Night's Dream 10 times over, and every production is going to be a little different if I have a different director on every one of them. And so that's one of the most exciting things for me in theater, is that every show is going to be different, even if it's the same play. And letting the director be your leader. They're not going to tell you what it should look like, but they're going to tell you what interests them and what they want to focus on. And that can be really exciting. And then you start thinking, okay, well, they want to focus on X. What are the visuals that help tell that story? What will help carry out those themes? And more interesting to figure out, what thematically are we trying to convey? And how can I do that visually? If a director comes to me and says, I need a door on stage right and it should be green, that's not very interesting. I can figure that out later. But if I know that the space is supposed to feel scary and the door is supposed to feel menacing, then that's really helpful to me as the designer. And then I can start to figure out what that means.
Thank you all so much. I think that leads us really well into our next question, which is, what are the steps for designing a concept for a show? And is there a format that you should follow for every project? Pamela, if you want to take this one again.
Sure. I wish there were rules. There are no rules. Every situation is so different. Kind of, it really to snowball in what we just spoke of. It really is, it's figuring out what that theme is, what the emotion is behind what you're portraying, and then building and growing your inspiration through your director, through your natural collaboration. And make sure I'm answering this correctly, I'm sorry, and not spiraling it into the last question. So please circle back to me if you don't mind. I'm going to read that question.
Pamela?
Is it me now?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Two different Pamelas. So for me, it all starts with this conversation. You cannot, like, as was said earlier, you kind of have to be in this point of view together, like in the train together. You jump and say, okay, this is where we are going. So kind of like laying that pathway. It is the first step, but I would say it changes for the projects you're doing. If you're doing something experimental, your process can be completely different. If you're doing something more classical, then your path will be different. So I would say the most important is just keep the openness to always receive feedback, always be able to express yourself and ask questions if you if you are not clear on something and you're not 100% sure what they're trying to, like, what is required from your design. So just always ask questions and be willing to always communicate. So either visually or verbally, you have to always push that communication.
You brought up concept before, and I think it's an important word in what we do, and it's also it can get in your way sometimes also. But I think what your concept is on a show is is your idea behind the design. It's not what it looks like. That's style, and style really can come later. You need to get the idea. And if you have a really good idea about what the show is about, you can figure out how to do that idea for $10 or for $1 million. And it's really helpful when you get an idea that you can hang on to. But if your idea is that everything has to be gold plated, then you maybe can't do that for $10. So that's a style choice. But if your idea is that everything should be rich and overpowering, then you can probably figure out a way to do that for $10. And that, when you get into design as a business, that's important, because I've done shows where I have $1 million budget, and I've done shows where I have a $10 budget, and one is not more important to me than the other. And the ones with the most money don't tend to be the ones that are the most interesting. Although money is helpful in design, it gives you some opportunities to try things, but if you've got a really solid idea, you can figure out how to do that almost no matter what your budget is, and it will guide you through and start to answer any questions you come up with as you go along.
Excellent. Thank you all. Our next question changes the focus a little bit. The student said, as much as I love performance theater, I love technical theater and definitely see myself pursuing a career in costume/wardrobe departments and stage management. I feel like I don't know as much about getting jobs in technical theater since there are no auditions or agents in technical theater. How does this work?
I was super excited about this question, actually, because there was no blueprint when I graduated. I started out as an actress and actually changed my major to special effects halfway through my college career. And the best advice I could give is network with everybody around you. I know we're going to talk about networking a lot and building those relationships, but that is, I feel like, what takes the cake in this industry. Speaking and keeping those relationships with everybody that you meet from high school forward on is what's going to help you grow and build and gain access to that world. I would have never thought in a million years some of the opportunities I've had, even outside of theater, because of relationships I made on some random show, off the block. And so the stronger relationships that you can build, the more in the know you can kind of stay as far as activity goes, being active with those around you, reaching out, speaking out, asking questions that sometimes are difficult and uncomfortable. How did you get that job? That was a question I asked someone that they were almost shocked. No one really asked that. How did you get that job? Who do I need to speak with? Reaching out to local theaters, reaching out to local groups, local creative groups. I mean, you guys have technology at your fingertips. Facebook is honestly a random resource that can get you work or get you connections to get the job that you want. So I would just say, just talk about what it is that you wish to achieve, talk about what it is that you want to do, and follow those that are doing what it is that you want to do, and ask them how they got there.
What Pamela said like 1,000 times over, it's so true. It's how, as a freelancer, you get work. I moved to New York. I didn't know anybody in this city. And I got my first job as a costume designer off of a bulletin board at NYU where I was studying. And that led to some other jobs. But it is all about networking. And I think I'm naturally kind of a wallflower. I don't like going out to cocktail parties and chit-chatting with people. And I taught myself how to do it, because that kind of thing is crucial to making a career. I think it's probably true in any career, but when you're working as a freelancer and any job is only going to last for a couple of months and then you have to look for the next one, you've got to be doing it constantly, and you've got to be able to pile jobs on top of each other. As a designer, when I was young, I would design 30 shows a year sometimes. And even now I do 15 or 20 shows a lot of years. And when I was young, I kept a mailing list. And this may sort of make me seem old, but using snail mail, I would send a postcard for every show I did to everybody on the mailing list. And that was anyone who I ever met who might get me a job, an actor, a director, a producer, mostly directors, because that's who hires designers mostly. But when I was really doing this the most, I had maybe 100 people on that list, and I was doing 30 shows a year. And every show I would write a little handwritten note on a postcard for that show and send it to all those people. So that's 30 shows times 100 people. That's a pretty big time commitment, and it was sort of exhausting. And, I bet 98 of those postcards went right into the trash every time I did it. But if even 2 of them or 1 of them got looked at and somebody called me up and offered me another job, that was another job that I had. And that's the way you build and maintain a career. And it never ends if you're going to be a freelancer. I've got done 23 Broadway shows, and I don't send postcards out anymore, but I still constantly am chasing people down and meeting this director and saying, hey, I really liked what you did on this show. I'd love to do something with you. And it's what makes the career exciting too, is you meet new people that way and you learn new ways of looking at things.
Yes, exactly. Exactly that. And I want to tell you, well, I'm an immigrant. I came here to teach at Kansas State University and just got here in August. So of course that part is exciting, like start meeting people and like start getting to know people and making relationships. And trust yourself, trust your skills, and know whether in tech theater or in design, your skills are so valuable, and just trust them. Just go for it and show your work and like accept feedback from people. Ask, show your stuff to people and say, oh, look at this that I did, and like just put yourself out there. That's a process that is very great, and is the human part of our discipline, I would say, because we are just always, I like to be in my studio just painting and doing stuff, and like, as people said, it's just like I'm more comfortable working like that just by myself. So we have to like train ourselves to be out there and like talk to people and network.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. This was really great. We are now going to turn it over to our final focus area, which is performers and casting directors, with Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adine. So this final focus group, which is entitled Performers and Casting Directors, will last until 1:20. And it is my great pleasure to introduce you to casting director Carrie Barden and our amazing performer panelists, actress Elaine Hendricks, most recently from CW's Dynasty, Norm Lewis, most recently from Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods, and the man with whom this whole event would not have been possible, the absolutely amazing Schuler Hensley. So let's jump right in with some questions from our students. The first question is, what would you consider a good start for somebody wanting to make connections? Would you take that away, Schuler?
Sure. A good start is to actually start. I think that sounds silly, but there is never a time when you should not make connections and not network. And I was going to save this to the end, but I'm sitting here. I've done this for a long time, but I've got notes from this entire panel of things. You never are too old to learn, and you're never too old to network. Yeah. And it should be just a part of your being, because networking for me is not just meeting people to get work or to further your career, but it's meeting people to collaborate as an artist. So it's never done. Everything about networking should be like breathing. And it's something that we do anyway. We network all day long with our daily lives. So we always network. That's my short answer. I made it a lot longer than it needed to be.
We'll take it all.
Yeah, there we go.
I'll jump in, especially as a woman. I very early in my career decided I had boundaries that I wouldn't cross. Like for me, I don't have any judgment on it. I just knew that I wouldn't be comfortable doing nudity in projects. And I had some other so I decided what I was willing to do, what I wasn't willing to do. And then everything up to the point that I wasn't willing to do, I just did everything that I possibly could. I went to every event that I possibly could, every class. I sent my headshot and resumes to schools to do student films. I was on, at that time it was Backstage West. It's now just Backstage. I networked, I took classes. I mean, I did everything. And as long as I didn't feel that I was compromising myself and what was important to me, I went for it. And then did my best also to stay in touch. I still to this day write thank you notes. I have a whole system on my computer of keeping notes of people I've met or who I've worked with, and it's all important. It's all definitely paid off.
Thank you. Harry?
Yes, I think, you know, and I'm very honored to be on this panel with these interesting actors and talented actors and everyone else as well. But I feel like being open as a human being really is part of getting started. And so being interested in other people as well as your own drive as an artist and an actor is important. But I do feel like one of the main things that I feel like gets in someone's way is thinking there's actually a step to get to the next step. There's not. There's no clear guidelines for being an artist. You just have to be an artist. And I feel like if you're open to other humans in any walk of life, you're going to learn something from them. And then it's going to help you as evolving as an artist. And so, yes, going to parties, going to events, going to, you know, the things where you know people are going to be that are in our business is important, but also being open to the people that you meet in life is also important.
Mm-hmm. So. Sure. Norm?
Everything everyone has said. Basically, it's just, you know, you can be an artist and be like introspective and all that kind of stuff, but you're just going to be an artist at home. So, you know, no one else is going to see it. So you have to network, you have to show up. That's my main thing. When I first moved here, kind of like Kenny said, I majored in something different. I majored in business, and I worked in advertising for 5 years before I moved here. So I was a late bloomer. I got here when I was close to 27 years old. So most of my colleagues had just graduated from college, and they were in the younger 20s. But I started, and I mean, I want to tie a lot of things in, but there's so much time we have. But I said, I'm just gonna, because I was so naive, I showed up to everything. Unless they specifically asked for blonde hair, blue eyes, or, you know, whatever, I showed up. And in fact, one story is, I'll make it quick. I showed up for an audition for a chorus line. I can't dance. I'm a mover, but I can't dance. I sang my song. They talked, the people behind the desk, and they said, how would you like to play Richie? And I said, well, do you want to see me move? They were like, you're the only black guy that showed up, so we want you to do it. We'll work around you. I didn't end up doing the show, but it was like, I just showed up and I got the job. So just show up.
Thank you so much. So I have another question. What are the tools needed for a successful audition?
That's
hard. I've actually been totally prepared, and I didn't bomb or anything. It's just that I wasn't what they wanted. So you just have to just do what you can, be the best you can, and then it's not in your hands anymore. I've also shown up at auditions where I totally screwed up badly and got hired. So I don't know how to answer that question.
From my perspective, it's being interested in the character that you're asked to come in and audition for. And each audition is its own thing. There are auditions that directors want you to stick to the lines of the script and be word perfect for. There are auditions that directors like to improvise, you know, in the framework of the story itself. So being able to listen, I think, is one of the best tools you can develop. And then being able to incorporate what is being thrown at you as an actor to think deeper about the character, but also being interested in the character that you're asked to come in and portray, and being excited to show what you feel like is your idea of who this person is in this story. And I think it goes back to what everybody has been talking about, is we're storytellers. And so being able to figure out what the character's purpose in a story, whether it's a one-line role or a leading role, there's a reason that character is in the story. So getting those tools together about what that person's life is and being excited to show who that person is the best tool you can have as an actor.
Thank you. you.
I've had phenomenal auditions, and I've had just gut-wrenching, horrible auditions, and everything in between. And so for me, I decided that it was most important that when I walk out of the door, when I'm finished, that I don't feel like I'm beating myself up or hating on myself. That has become pretty much the top priority of anything. And so for me, I back up from there. So when I visualize and I see myself walking out of that door, what do I need to do all the way from every single step once I get that material, and prepare as best as I can for every step of the way, because I don't want to walk out the door hating myself.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I have a final question, and this question is, from the perspective of a casting director or actor, what has been the most beneficial thing you have done to make yourself marketable? And what skills and tools are necessary to create a strong, well-rounded career?
These questions are these are like really thoughtful questions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I'm actually waiting for the answers. So can I say something first?
Absolutely.
Because it's an answer to the previous question, but it also applies here. And I think it's so many times as an actor, you're trying to figure out, when I go into the room, or when what are they looking for? What do they want? What does the person on the other side of the table, how can I impress them, or what do they need?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can drive yourself absolutely crazy thinking that way. And I encourage you from this moment on as a performer to reverse that and go into each audition saying, what is the one thing that I want to share with that person? What do I have to say about the character? I've gotten a lot of like Norm, I went into some auditions that I had no business being there, much less any hope of getting, that I ended up getting because I had something to say and the characters said something to me, and I just wanted to share that. I think that's a really important mindset to have for your whole career, is to realize that you're the one empowered, because people want you to succeed. I've also been on the other side of the table. I want that actor coming into the room to be comfortable. I want them to share something with me that I may have never thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important way to navigate this whole crazy audition process.
One of the best pieces, piggyback on that, one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten was when I was scared to come here. I didn't go to any school, any Royal Academy of whatever acting school. I came from business. Some of the terminology, I didn't know what a tombe pas de bourrée was. So one guy gave me the best advice. He said, go into that audition and say, because they have a problem. The people behind the desk have a problem. I'm your answer. And now you might not be the solution for that problem, but go and answer everybody else's problem. Just show up. Just show up.
Yeah, I agree with both you and Schuler about that. It's we're hoping that the actor that walks in the room actually solves the problem of casting that role. And so we're hoping that they bring to life that one performance, And I think part of, the answer to part of that question is that you have to love what you do. Yeah. And if you don't love auditioning, then, it's a difficult challenge for you, because it is your chance to act every day. When you get an audition, you get to act for 10 minutes that day. And so if you love acting, and if you love what you're doing, I love what I'm doing. I love casting, and I've been doing it for 30 years and I still love it. And I feel like if you love what you're doing as a performer, or any other field that we're in this business, then you're going to enjoy your life and also be able to work. So, because that passion does come through when somebody shows up.
Right.
Yeah. But this was, you were asking specifically about marketing. What was the question again?
Well, yeah, at this point we have just 1 minute left, and they were really just.
I concur. How about that? I concur.
You concur. Awesome. They were really just asking, hey, how do I, what skills, what tools do I need to have a strong, well-rounded career?
Yeah, well, I also say be very invested in life. Like be very your career is not the end all be all. Mm-hmm. And there will be highs and lows and all kinds of steps in between. And so really like just be into your life, love life, every chance you can.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else?
Just to piggyback on her, just real quick.
Yeah.
Don't let your art validate who you are. You validate your art. So just to piggyback on what she was saying.
Oh, good advice. Thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn this over to the fantabulous Angela to help us close out our event.
All right. Oh my gosh. You know what? Like Schuler, I am also taking notes. And just kind of as we're coming to the end, some of the things that really popped out across a lot of the different focus groups are make connections. Don't be afraid to fail. Put yourself out there. Show up. That landed in every single focus group. That we are storytellers. Like that is the heart of all of our contributions toward any piece of work that we're working on. And then the last thing is just you are enough. Develop and focus and make you excellent. So thank you so very much. So now I'd like to invite all of our panelists back to the full screen. And with our last few minutes, we're going to do a kind of quick lightning round with one singular question from a student that all of the panelists will answer. Each panelist will have about 45 to 60 seconds to answer this. And we'll just go in the kind of way that the panels went, starting with Kenny and ending with Schuler. So the closing question is this. Given the world that is laying out before the class of 2020, with both its challenges and its opportunities, what thoughts, ideas, or wisdom would you want to give our students as they look towards the future? Kenny, take it away.
There are always greater and less talented people than yourselves. The people that have made it are the people that say, you will not outwork me. That's the thing that you can control. So never let anyone outwork you. And I think every day as an artist, a fellow artist, I work on mind, soul, and body, how to get better in all of those things. So I encourage you to work on mind, soul, and body. It's a very lonely profession. So there are even people in your own family who tell you, oh, you can't act. Oh, I can tell a joke. I can sing, you can't sing. So let your belief in yourself be so strong that it doubles everybody else's disbelief. And when you finish an audition, the most beautiful thing to see is for you to drop that mic and walk out of the room.
Thank you, Kenny. Warren?
Yeah, mine is easy. I have three easy things. The first is say yes. Say yes to everything. If Kenny Leon asks you to jump over a table, you say yes. If a casting director asks if you can speak Spanish, you say yes, and you go in the hallway and you learn Spanish. You just say yes no matter what. You just say yes no matter what, and you figure it out, because it allows you to keep moving, and it allows those of us who create, it allows us to keep creating. So I think the word yes is a really scary word sometimes, but I would say yes no matter what. My second one is this was mentioned earlier, but I would say do the work. Do the work, whatever that means to you. I mean, Kenny just said mind, body, soul, right? Which is profound in every way, but do the work, whether that means reading your script on a day off, whether that means doing some extra work on a character, whether that means turning up early to be warm and ready. But I would say do the work. And my third one, I think is a good one for right now. I would say never give up. Never give up. I would say be tenacious and keep going. So they're my three. Say yes, do the work, never give up.
Excellent. Kenneth.
Mine is simple. I say, do you. Celebrate the things that are important to you. And remember this, that no one can tell your story better than you. It's so important that you tell your own story. Congratulations.
Jeff.
Well, I think you've gotten all the advice that you're going to really need, because I've heard this so many times from artists that I've met or represented. I think actors are the most fascinating people in the world. And sorry, I don't think we're leaving you with a very good world right now. And it's up to you to try to make it better. I grew up, I was a child of the 70s, and I marched, I voted, and when I saw the results of the last presidential election, my heart broke, because I felt like we didn't do right by you. We didn't get the job done. You as communicators are there to get the job done for the next generation. And I wish you well.
Glenn.
How on earth can a Hollywood agent follow that? Wonderful, Jeff.
And no glycerin.
Really. I maybe so many people here have said so many brilliant things and such great advice that I feel like I would just be sort of touching back on a little bit of what everybody else has said, but I'll bring it back maybe to the industry part of the art that we're all excited about, is that your network is the most important thing. And I think there's a tendency for people to look up and try to network with people that can help them. But what you should really be focusing on is connecting with people that you care about, and you will all come up together. You know, there are people, there's people that I've worked with, and we were both assistants 30 years ago. And now, I'm an agent, and they're a casting director, or they're at a studio, and these relationships that you build should feed your soul first, but ultimately you all grow together and help each other. And I think networking is less about finding somebody that's going to do something for you now than it is about connecting with people that where you're going to collaborate for a lifetime. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Pamela.
Yes, and how wonderful to hear everybody's advice. First, congratulations. This is a milestone. This is something great achievement. And my first advice is to be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. Remember, one time I heard, like, if you ever have to choose between being right and being kind, choose being kind, because you will always be right doing that way. So I would say that's most important for me. Make sure you look at what the things that make your heart smile, make you really excited, and keep that energy. Keep always looking for the things that, I was born to do this. I started engineering and I was like, no, I'm not born to do this. I had to switch and I had to gear completely, and, just follow that dream. Go whatever it takes you. I come from Costa Rica, from a small little town, all the way here to Atlanta. So wherever it takes you, just follow it, be open, be hungry, and be ready, be ready for change, be ready to embrace it. And I want to share with you a phrase by Cesar Cruz that is, art should conform to disturb and disturb the comfortable. So this is something that, we use in our times. These times require that we really step up and that we really see the challenges we have, but we really take on the task, to tell our stories and to to try to comfort each other, try to push for the things we want to see in the world.
Thank you, Beowulf.
I think my advice is love the theater or whatever project you're doing. And I think any of you who are considering going into this as a career, it's because you love it and it's an easy thing to fall in love with. And this comes with a warning, which is that it will test you. It's a hard job. What's great about it, you've already figured out. What's hard about it, you're gonna run into. You may think you've run into it already, but it will really test you. There's a lot of, you may do a project that you pour your heart and your soul into and you love it more than anything, and nobody else likes it. They all say it's garbage. And you have to just love it for what it is. If you're going into this because you want to be famous, don't do it, because most people who do this, even who are very successful, never get famous doing it. Doing it for the love of it has to be enough. And if you're going into it because you want to get fabulously wealthy, go do something else. There's a lot of easier ways to make money than this. You're never going to make enough money to make it worth it to do this for the amount of time you're going to put into it. There are people who get famous and there are people who make money doing this, but it's not most of us. You've got to do it because you love it, and that's got to be enough. And if you reach a point where you don't love it anymore, then you need to stop. And I don't mean if you don't love it for a day. We all hate it some days. We all hate it some weeks. But if you go for a few months or a few years and you're not loving it, then go do something else. Go do something that makes you happy. But mostly, congratulations to all of you and best of luck to everybody.
Thank you, Beowulf. Pamela.
Yes. Well, congratulations to everyone. You are truly the next generation of great art, and I'm very excited to see what comes from it. Creating through every connection would be my best advice. Every moment that you have, every interaction that you make, use that to propel your art further. Never make concessions. That's one thing that I don't know if we've spoke enough about. Yes, you want to appease those that are around you. You want to get the job, but at the same time, if you're passionate about what it is that you do and you believe in your art, do not make concessions. It is easier to ask forgiveness than it is to get permission. So sometimes there are moments in your career where you have to stand by your art, you have to stand by your craft, and I encourage you all to do that. I'm excited to see what comes from your generation.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Elaine.
Hi, oh my gosh, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this moment. It's so exciting. Even through a Zoom, I just feel the energy and I'm so excited for you all. And one of the things that I would say is that it's a long journey. It's a full lifestyle. It's not just a career. It's not just what you do. There's going to be so much involved. Also like a relationship, so there's never going to be one moment that you're going to make it, or one moment that you're going to lose it all. It's a long journey. It's a whole lifestyle. Bring all of yourself to it, and just know that over time it's the long journey. That's what makes it. That's how you make it, is by one foot in front of the other. Doing everything that we're all saying. And then the last thing I would say that I don't know if we really pointed out to is that I think that having a purpose and actually a charity outside of work, something that you really are passionate that you can give back to, will feed you in times when you need to be fed. So it's all a give and take. And just like this moment here, I'm getting so much from this by also giving back, and it's beautiful. So thank you all, and congratulations, and break a leg.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Norm.
Hi, congratulations to everybody. I'm honored to be on this panel with all these new and old friends now. And I just want to say, piggybacking on what you just said about giving back, that's the main thing. That's so beautiful. Thank you for saying that. It really is about giving. That's when you can receive. I wrote notes as well because I'm not as smart as everybody on this panel, but backing up what Kenny Leon was saying about mind, body, and spirit, that's the number one thing. You have to take care of all of that. You are your product, and know that you are enough after you do that. Be prepared, show up, and don't be afraid to fail. This is something that I found. It says, don't be afraid to start over again. This time, You're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. So just keep going, just keep going. Like this is a marathon. It's not a 100-yard dash. So congratulations again. And when you become big and famous, I might need a job. So
networking. I love it, Norm. Carrie?
Yes, congratulations to everyone. You've made it this far, and it's a very long journey that you've set yourself on. And I see actors that are 4 years old. I see actors that are in their 80s, and they all have had this life that they love. And I think that if you want to be an actor, you need to stay determined to do that, because people will tell you you can't do it. If you want to be famous, go into reality television, because that's where famous people go, with no talent. But I feel like, there's so many different areas I majored in theater at the University of Georgia. I didn't know that I was going to become a casting director. I became one, and I've loved it for 30 years and still do. So there are many different areas. And I think that part of the journey is to find out what all of the other people in our industry do. So getting work as a PA, or, showing up to do student films is important for everyone, as they move through life, because you figure out what your job might be and what other people's support for acting or directing or everything else, the makeup artist in this world, support everything that we're doing storytelling wise. So there's so many different ways to be in this industry, and it is a huge privilege. My dad was a plumber, my mother was a housewife. They had no idea what I was talking about when I said I was going to be part of the film industry, and yet here I am, and I've been doing it for my entire life. So stick with it, and don't let anybody, as somebody was saying earlier, don't let anybody tell you can't do it, because you can. So.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And last but definitely not least, Schuler.
First of all, I want to thank this panel. Every single one of you. It never ceases to amaze me how much you can be inspired and learn in any situation. I've learned more today than I have in a long, long time. And you all are my friends and colleagues. And it's just a good environment to be around. And I appreciate you so much for doing this. And to you seniors, you know how I feel about you guys. I do the award show every year. I get involved and people think, oh, it's so nice. And I have to be honest, I do it because you inspire me. I come home no matter what I'm doing because I'm inspired by you. And that's a selfish thing, but it's something that is invaluable to me. And I want to thank you so much. You're going to rock it, whatever you end up doing. And because I'm not the smartest guy in the world, I like to keep things simple. And like Warren, I have 3 things that I try to tell myself before every audition, before I go on stage every time, before I start something, before I go network, before everything. And that is, the 3 things are that I'm independent of the good and bad opinions of others. That means I don't listen to good reviews. I don't listen to bad reviews. I'm independent of opinions of other people. If you can think that, it's going to service you well. And it flows into number 2, which is I am beneath no one and superior to no one. Everyone in my life is my equal. I treat people the same way. I think it's important that we need to tell ourselves that today, especially, but every day. If you see somebody, you know that you're not better or worse than they are. You're the same. And if you can do those 2 things, independent of the good and bad opinions of others, beneath no one and superior to no one, then the 3rd thing is I am fearless. When you're fearless, magic happens. art happens.
Yep.
So,
Wow.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much to all of our panelists, all your wisdom, your generosity, your time, and especially to the graduating class of 2020 on behalf of ArtsBridge, of Schuler, of all of our panelists. Congratulations. We cannot wait to see how you will be leading us into the future. Thank you, everyone, and happy Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you very, very much.